I thought that people might be interested to hear how Sun Ra actually communicated with you in terms of joining the band, and maybe to give an example of your reading, your writing from the book. And so I was going to ask you if you could read from page 23, which is the first chapter of the book, The Call, which just really, yeah.
All right.
So one of the things that the book does, as we said, is to interweave not only Ahmed's personal history, but also the history of the music as he saw it and witnessed it, and his time with Sun Ra. So it's a lot of different interweaving themes, and this is an example of one of those incidents.
The call never seems to come when I expect, but always comes when it's supposed to. This one came on a Sunday morning in April of 1975. I was in bed with Iyabode, who was pregnant with what would turn out to be our twin sons. She answered the phone. I'll never forget the incredulous way she handed it to me, as if the creator, him, herself, were on the other end. She whispered while cupping the phone with one hand, "Ahmed, it's Sun Ra." This was pretty amazing to me as well. I tried to calm myself enough to say hello. The voice on the other end was deliberate, matter-of-fact, and very Southern. Somehow I knew that in the years to come, I would become quite familiar with it. "This is Sun Ra. I've been trying to get hold of you." I could feel an intense sense of excitement running through me. Sun Ra has been trying to find me. In 1975 in New York City, and especially in Brooklyn where we lived, Sun Ra was it. They didn't come any bigger, at least not in the music known as jazz. In the more than 10 years since Sun Ra had migrated to New York from Chicago, he'd made his presence thoroughly known. He'd become a folk hero in the black community, especially among people who considered themselves aware of African American culture. Iyabode and I were among those people. I'd met Iyabode, born Cheryl Taylor, about 3 years before, when our destinies literally collided on 6th Avenue and 8th Street in Greenwich Village. She was working for a jeweler on 3rd Street known as Dar El Sudan, and I was coming from a rehearsal with my horn in its case. The handle of my case snapped just as I bumped into her. She was the most attractive woman I had ever seen up until that point. She had her head completely shaved in an East African style, and she wore beautiful silver hoop earrings. We began a conversation that resulted in our going on a date that evening, December 9th, 1972, to hear the Freddie Hubbard Band at the Beacon Theater on the Upper West Side. Our 2 children were the result of that fateful meeting. Sun Ra had rendered himself a unique artist by owning his own record label and publishing company as he did. His independence was both an asset and a hindrance. The asset was that he played where he wanted, how he wanted, with and for whom he wanted. The hindrance was lack of recognition. So in the early 1970s, when Sonny, as he was called, and his business partner, Alton Abraham, had licensed ABC Paramount's Impulse Records to distribute several of their 1950s recordings, which up to that point had been modestly available, things began to change. Sun Ra was well on his way to becoming a major international star. By 1975, when I received the call, he was already there. When I hung up the phone on that Sunday in April, I immediately turned to face a person whose bright eyes revealed the same mixture of surprise and joy I was experiencing. The potential birth of our sons, moreover, endowed Iyabode's ebonic skin with a radiance reserved for those who bring forth the young. She had been favored by the Creator, who appeared not to want any to be unaware of this fact. She had been blessed with full lips and a nose just flat enough, along with almond-shaped eyes and an elongated neck that gave her an aura of royalty. I'd written a song for her called Ebony Queen. The pregnancy had affected her in another interesting way. She had lost weight everywhere except in her stomach. Her shoulders had become so thin, she looked almost undernourished. It was as if all of her food went to the babies while making her stomach seem incredibly huge. A moment ago, she'd been trying to hear my conversation with Sun Ra by putting her chin on my shoulder. Now she wanted a report. Ahmed, was that really Sun Ra? What did he want? Yes, it was really him, I said. Well, what did he want, she repeatedly asked. He wants me to play with him. Where, she asked. Here in Brooklyn at the East. At the East? When? He didn't say exactly when, but it seems like it's going to be sometime this month. He said he wants me to come to Philadelphia to rehearse with him. To Philadelphia? I could feel her enthusiasm dimming. I thought you promised that you wouldn't go out of town until the babies were born. I know I did, sugar, but it's only going to be for a day, and the babies aren't due until next month. And besides, this means I can earn a little extra money. I could probably earn more in a night than I do in a week working at that copying job. This seemed to reanimate her and bring back some of her initial joy. Ahmed, she said as if she were thinking out loud, you know, I never really thought that Sun Ra called people. I always thought that he'd simply transport himself into somebody's living room. Yeah, Yabo, I can dig it. But you know, I'm just happy he called me.